Mind the gap, the tax gap that is, and we discuss personal versus business credit cards. Which ones should you be using in your business? Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host Claire Hancock is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. Right, Claire, lots to talk about today. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm enjoying the sunshine. Thanks very much, Simon.
Yep, summer's finally arrived. We've been whinging about the weather quite a lot this year, but it's fair to say we're having a little bit of a heat wave, which we're liking, yeah?
No, I'm still whinging because it's now too hot.
Okay, fair enough.
So, typical Brit.
Something that has caught my eye this week that was really interesting is that as we're enjoying this heat, I'm drinking lots and lots of bottles of fizzy drink. And am I the only one that has recognised this annoying thing where the cap is now attached to the bottle, and every time I drink, it's scratching my face, it's pouring bits of sticky Coke over my face, and, you know, if you try and desperately pull it off, it just spills your drink everywhere. So anyway, I read something interesting today about why. Do you know why this has come about?
It's an EU rule.
This is one for the Brexiteers, yes. I'm absolutely shocked. Yes, it's a EU law that's come into place that now all bottle tops across the EU have to be attached to the bottle.
Yeah, so it's to help recycling, actually, Simon. So as somebody that doesn't really drink many fizzy drinks, if I ever buy anything from the shop, 9 times out of 10, it's just a bottle of water. So I have no problem with the bottle top touching my face because it's just water at the end of the day. But yeah, it's because when the bottle goes to recycling, the old bottles, they would end up with the plastic bottle. Then you would have that tiny thick bit of plastic still attached to the bottle, and then the bottle caps would just all go awry and they were very difficult to recycle. So it's to help recycle more and to make the recycling process better.
And even it was to save the tortoises, no?
Even though we've now left the EU, the vast majority of our bottles are still manufactured in Europe, and or they have the same like tooling kits and design as the European production. So there's no plans for that to change, and we should expect to see it on all the other bottles. And to be honest, I'm a big fan because I think it's a very, very minor inconvenience in order to make the planet a bit better.
Well, so much for rowing our own sovereignty and making our own laws, hey?
Yeah, that was never going to happen though, was it?
No, indeed. Anyway, let's see what this week's actual news story of the week is. So this week, Claire, you want to talk to me about the tax gap, apparently, don't you? So what's going on?
This is a bit of a worrying headline that was released, actually, because it links loosely to what's happening with the general election at the moment. So HMRC released some statistics about the tax gap. Now, the tax gap is the theoretical amount of tax that should be paid by people and isn't. So it covers absolutely everything from like people that do self-assessment right up to VAT returns, income taxes, corporation tax, capital gains, absolutely everything goes into that, what's known as the tax gap. So the tax gap is caused because people make just innocent mistakes when they're doing tax returns, and it's everything from innocent mistakes, people maybe not even knowing that they need to do a tax return and pay taxes, right up to criminal people that are deliberately not paying taxes and you know, moving money around and illegal dealings and all that type of thing.
So is this both tax avoidance and tax evasion? So the illegal act of avoiding tax and the legal act of avoiding tax, and they're trying to clamp down on both, even though one's legal.
Yeah, absolutely. So that it covers tax avoidance and evasion, and then just innocent mistakes that people, I say innocent, maybe it's not the right word to use, just human error is a lot of it.
Especially in big organisations, a big finance sponsor, I imagine there's just rafts of human error that go on.
This is where it gets interesting because, as you've just said, you imagine in big organisations it happens, but actually the tax gap, HMRC have released the statistics, it's £39.8 billion, which is the biggest it's ever been. And 60% of that is down to small businesses. And the reason 60% of it. So I think a lot of that is because so many small businesses try and do their tax returns themselves. They can't afford an accountant, or they don't think they need an accountant.
How can I just ask, how in the news story, if they're trying to clamp down on what they don't know, how do they know this detail?
Well, one of the reasons that they're attributing the fact that it's gone up is because they're doing so many more what they call inquiries into businesses, so just random inquiries, but also when HMRC are now trying to link up far more of their systems than they've ever done. So when you submit your tax return, they can now link it to the information, for example, that you submitted, maybe if you've got employees and you're submitting payroll data to them, if you're submitting VAT returns to them. So all of this information is collating a picture of your business. And so it enables HMRC to more cleverly select the businesses.
Data to get
absolutely.
To a number that they think it might be.
There's a lot more data available to HMRC, which means that they are doing far more inquiries as well. And the reason why I think this is, well, as somebody that, I'm an accountant, so I'm fairly confident that all of our tax returns have always been correct. But I think other small businesses might be a little bit worried by this because Labour have said in their manifesto, one of their big plans is to collect an extra £6 billion from this tax gap. And they've said that they're specifically going to target big corporations and wealthy individuals. But big corporations and wealthy individuals only account for 6.2 billion of the tax gap. So in reality, if Labour are going to fund their spending from this extra 6 billion they're going to collect from the tax gap, the only place they can realistically collect that extra money is from small businesses.
Yeah. So and the only way they can really do that is just by ramping up inspections, presumably.
Yeah. So and there's money allocated to this.
And to do that, it's just more resource, more cost, more money back to the taxpayer to pay for the resource in the first place. We already have 5 million working people working for the government in the UK. And it's just going to be more people.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is money actually allocated to this already, Rachel Reeves. I think they said 500 million will be given to HMRC to help close this tax gap. But yeah, in reality, they can only go after small businesses. If you were looking from the outside in, you would go after the biggest chunk, which is that 60%, which is small businesses. So I think we can expect to see...
Presumably they're the hardest as well to audit because they're so fragmented. So you've got to do so many more little audits versus grabbing a few of the big corporates. So it's interesting that they wouldn't go for the low-hanging fruit first rather than the bigger long tail, so to speak.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of what they do will be automated from systems and things like that to start off with. So they'll send letters to people and they will request certain pieces of information. So they won't be doing these deep dive audits unless they really need to. So I think small businesses in particular really need to think about how confident they are with whoever is doing their accounts.
This is your lesson here. Now's the time to cross your T's and dot your I's.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah. So it's just something for businesses to be thinking about is if you've got maybe for the past few years, you've been trying to scrimp and save and maybe your bookkeeper's doing things or your office manager who doesn't really have any proper qualifications. And also if
who's ultimately responsible, if you outsource that to the bookkeeper and the bookkeeper's making the errors, whether it's deliberate or not deliberate, you're liable as a business owner or as the person submitting it.
It is a really difficult one because if you look at the terms and conditions from most accountants, it simply says that as the business owner, we can only advise you about the information that you provide us with. So if as a business owner you don't provide all of the information to us as accountants, then we can't be held liable if something comes out because of that. But at the same time, as a business owner, sometimes you don't know what you need to give your accountant and what you need to tell your accountant about. Yeah. So it really is about having a proactive accountant and not scrimping and saving. You need to make sure that you're using a qualified accountant. So there are lots of people out there that are selling bookkeeping and accounting services and they don't have any qualifications. And you absolutely need to make sure that you've got an accountant or a bookkeeper that's got professional indemnity insurance so that if they are negligent,
and
then
you sue them,
you can make a claim against them. Also, just a final tip that I will give before we move on is the FSB, the Federation of Small Businesses. I think some of the memberships still come with like free support line and free legal advice if you do get a tax inspection. So that's also maybe something that some people might find beneficial if they're particularly worried.
Great. So in a nutshell, mind the gap. Let's move on to this week's deep dive. You didn't like that joke?
No, I did. I did particularly like that.
That was the headline.
Anyway. It was quite good.
Okay. So in this week's deep dive, we're talking personal versus business credit cards, all things credit cards. And this is on the back of a great YouTube video that you've just done, isn't it, Claire, where you deep dive into the benefits or the pitfalls of using your own personal credit cards versus having a business credit card. And you're going to run us through some of those pluses and minuses and things that business owners should think about now, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's one of the things that probably crops up the most, actually. I don't know why business owners seem so unsure of this. And they say a lot of the time when I start working, they're like, oh, I've got everything on my personal card, or we're about to roll out corporate cards. And they always sort of seem to want my advice on it and to ask lots of questions about it. So I thought we'd just do a video on it. We've done a YouTube video and now we're talking about it on the podcast as well, because I think there are some, probably I think people would be quite surprised at my advice on this one, actually.
Okay, so where do we start? Can you just start by perhaps summarising the pros and cons between the two different options that we've got, or what are the options that we've got around credit?
Yeah, so the main difference, I mean, I won't delve too deep into this because I think our audience is quite switched on when it comes to this, but the personal credit card would be in your personal name, you're personally liable for it, whereas the business credit card would be in your business. Now, one of the cons about when you take on any sort of finance product, including credit cards, in your business name, then actually a lot of the banking and finance institutions still ask you to personally guarantee the any debt on the credit card, potentially anyway. So you could actually end up in the situation where even if you do get a corporate card, you're personally liable for it. I think the main thing to consider is if you're taking it in your personal name, obviously that does have an impact on your personal credit rating. Whereas if you're taking it in your business name, then it won't impact your personal credit rating. You know, if you're trying to get finance on a car or a mortgage or anything like that, they're the types of things you need to consider if it's in your name.
And practically speaking, we're talking about spending on your personal credit card and putting it back through your business as an expense claim, so to speak,
so your business
rather
just pays
than the
you
business
back.
directly paying the credit card off.
Yeah. And I think for me, probably the biggest decision factor, if the personal liability and the impact on your credit score isn't really a consideration for you or something that you're happy with, then the biggest thing comes down to the annual fees. Is that personal credit cards tend to be free to apply for, and the interest tends to be quite favourable on them. I mean, obviously we don't have favourable interest rates at the moment, but as a whole, credit cards tend to have fairly good personal interest rates versus corporate cards.
Okay, so you'd say corporate cards have
more expensive,
more penal interest rate.
Yeah, and you can get some really cracking deals on personal credit cards. I mean, we've had them with like 2-3 years interest free, where you can just, you know, rack up purchases galore on them and not have to worry about paying them off for a couple of years. So that can be quite handy for businesses as well if you need a bit of a boost longer term in your cash flow.
Yes, just to tide you over. And what about sort of credit limits and things like that? Is it easy to get a business credit card? But I guess people know whether it's easy for them to get a personal credit card because they would have done that and they'll know what kind of credit limits they'll get based on their incomes, credit history and various other things. How would it work for a business? Are you eligible for a credit card from day one with no trading history, or how? Yeah,
you would be. Most people would be able to get some form of credit card from day one, but the limitation will be that you will be asked to give a personal guarantee on it.
So it's pretty irrelevant, really.
Yeah, so from that perspective, there's not really any benefits. I mean, I've worked in companies where credit limits on credit cards have been, millions because there's so many employees that have got them and they're big corporates. So the credit limit is going to be treated a little bit similar to, if you're applying for a loan or applying from credit from another supplier. It's how big your business is, how good your cash flow is. So things like providing copies of your accounts. And I'm sure, if you've got a credit card, then the bank would likely run a credit check on you personally. They'll also run a credit check on your business as well.
Okay, so slightly different to getting business loans where you need slightly more trading history to get those type of things, but this is fairly easy because you just personally guarantee it.
Yeah, but saying that, even with a business loan,
if you personally guarantee it,
you get rejected and then you personally guarantee it, and all happy days, all of a sudden the market opens up to you. So yeah, this whole thing with people saying put things in your limited company and reduce the risk, unfortunately, the finance institutions then just say, Mr. Director or Mrs. Director, please sign personally for this. So it's very difficult.
Okay. Shall we talk about rewards and points on credit cards? Because it's a big thing for me. I like racking up my miles and various, always have done. Even in the corporate world, I was blessed with being able to use my personal credit card and claim it back. So that was sort of an extra benefit that I used to get from that. But even now, again, use my personal credit card and various other things. So what's the pros and cons? What's your thoughts on points or rewards back for putting your business spend through a credit card?
Yeah, so this is often something that I get asked about as well, is that people would be concerned that, we're racking up. I actually met with a business the other day and they said that, they go on 4 business class trips a year. Husband and wife team, they go on 4 holidays a year, business class, all paid on points every time from the air miles they're collecting by using their personal credit cards, and they were worried about the tax implications. But actually, there is a specific piece of HMRC legislation. We'll make sure this is in the podcast notes so everybody can go and read it. But it specifically says that as long as the credit card is in your name, any points that are collected are not seen as being a part of your employment or a part of your business, and they completely belong to you. There's no tax implications of it, and they're yours to do what you want with.
Is that just for a personal
credit card,
not a business credit
card? If you have the credit card in your business name and you're collecting points, then it does become a little bit more complicated because essentially the points belong to the business, but you could, for example, use it to pay for business flights and things like that if you've got air miles, for example.
Business flights deemed for business?
For business purposes, yeah.
Okay. And are there tax implications or anything like that? Or
so if you use your business air miles to pay for a personal holiday, then yes, that would be seen as like a benefit in kind. Just like if you just paid for a holiday out of your business, you wouldn't go and do that. So that then becomes the toss up is if you are somebody that thinks you're going to be collecting a lot of points and that is the reason why you're using a credit card versus a debit card or anything like that, then absolutely get it in your personal name.
So do we, in order to sort of maximise the most from credit cards, then trying to structure the payment of your suppliers as much as possible onto these personal credit cards that are kicking back rewards would be an interesting way to structure things? Yeah,
and do you know what? It's far more common these days with, you don't necessarily need to have that bulky credit card machine sitting on your desk anymore. You've got a lot of online platforms that you can just enter credit card details in to take payments. So a lot more businesses accept them now. And if you think about it from a cash flow perspective, if you are paying for something, say, for example, you get 30 days end of month from your supplier, I'd then call them on the first of the month, pay your bill. So you're only paying your bill 1 day late, pay it by credit card. You're potentially then going to not pay your credit card for another 60 days. So, really, this could be a great way of maximising your cash flow.
Interesting.
Really
that way.
Interesting way of doing it.
Great. Well, before we sort of summarise with your sort of recommendations, is there anything else that we've not touched on that we should be talking about in terms of credit cards?
Yeah, one of the things that often when businesses get a bit bigger, they want to start handing credit cards or debit cards or something out to their team members. And that's where it can become a bit more complicated and where they tend to then think, I need to switch to a corporate card. But also there are some really great prepaid cards out there as well, where you like load these cards and they're essentially like debit cards, but they've got to be preloaded. That can be like a really good way of giving out cards to your teams because they tend to have lower charges than credit cards actually.
Okay.
But just because you hand credit cards out to your team members who are likely to maybe have lower incidental spend, it tends to be, like if they're booking train tickets and there are people that are on the road, that type of thing. You could give credit cards to them, but also then keep yourself as the director using your personal credit card, racking up your air miles and getting all those benefits, because we know in most small businesses that it's actually normally the directors that are probably paying for a lot of things and are in charge of the purse strings.
And I guess there's another angle here I'm thinking here, and that is, about how important it is for business owners to be ruthless on managing overheads and costs. And this idea, even just the culture of handing out a load of business credit cards to people, that thought of when they spend, they're spending directly onto a business credit card versus spending on their own personal credit card and claiming back, to me feels like, they would be more frivolous with the spend and less analysing in terms of, getting the best deal for what they're spending on as well.
Yeah, but I'm thinking specifically like for trades businesses, for example, if you've got like a team of electricians or plumbers or somebody like that on the road, they're going to be going to a job and they then need to go and buy parts.
Picking the parts up, yeah.
So it's that type of thing where...
But usually you just have like an account with the builder's merchant or the trade merchant.
Yeah, but you're often close to like a small local independent supplier than one of the big merchants. So that's where I think probably most of the conversations that I'm having with clients about should I dish out credit cards to my team, that's probably where they come from.
Great. Well, should we summarise and wrap up with your recommendations? So personal versus business. What do you say, Claire?
Well, exactly what I do in my business is I have my personal Amex card where I'm racking up my air miles and enjoying my free flights, business class flights. And then when my team need cards, they get prepaid debit cards. So that would be my recommendation of the way to go.
Great. Keep it personal.
Yeah.
Love it. Cool. Well, let's move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra.
So Profit Cash Growth Extra is one of mine today, actually, and this is something called Small Business Saturday. Now, Small Business Saturday isn't actually until the 7th of December, but the reason why we're talking about it now is because the application to add your business onto it has been opened. Now, Small Business Saturday was actually introduced, I think it was like back in 2010 by Amex, and for anybody that has an Amex card, you might see in like the offers section. The reason why this is on my radar is because every year when Amex support this, if you go and spend in a business that is registered with this small business scheme on December the 7th, then you normally get a £5 credit back from Amazon to your,
I know what this is
£5 credit to Amex on
this
your
is
card.
when we always go around and we're like, buy it on your Amex card, Simon, because you get £5 off.
Yeah, you get £5 off.
Okay, they do this whole promotion, and loads of small businesses sign up to say, yes, if you use the Amex card, we'll give you kickback of cashback, extra cashback on the Amex card.
Yeah, so it was everything from
it is
like
really good, actually.
Independent shops to, like I think our mechanic was on it, some local restaurants were on it, coffee shops, everything like that. So, and do you know what was really fantastic about it being in December as well is you can go and buy Christmas gifts. So you just have to sign up online. It's completely free for businesses to enter, and that's why we're talking about it now in June, even though it doesn't happen until December, because businesses need to start registering now. You register for free, and then your business details will be published on the small business website. But they also say that if you post something on social media, then make sure that you tag them, and they'll give you a shout out and repost and retweet and things like that as well. So it's also just a fantastic way of getting a little bit of free marketing and getting your business name out there.
So you've got free marketing, you've got an opportunity to drive turnover at a time of the year that's notoriously difficult, and people are getting excited about this that have Amex cards. They do push this. We know 'cause we did it last year, and it got us out and about, going to places we wouldn't usually to get the benefits, didn't we?
Yeah. So it's not just retail; it's literally any small business. So obviously, it comes up on our radar when we go and do our Christmas shopping. But I will probably do some sort of offer for this so that people can get £5 cash back. I'm not sure what I'll do yet, but absolutely any business, any small business that meets the criteria can sign up to this. We don't know yet. It's not clear on the website whether Amex will be doing that offer where they get the £5 credit, but they've done that in prior years. So I think it will be very likely that they will do it again this year. But yeah, it's a chance to get some free advertising apart from anything else. So sign up to it.
Absolutely amazing. Great. Well, thanks for joining us for another week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back again next week. And as always, if you need to chat to Claire or any of her colleagues, you can go to the Profit Cash Growth website, profitcashgrowth.com. Check out the YouTube channel for more details of the personal versus business credit card article that we've just discussed through. And as always, we'll see you again next week.